Okay, anyone else in the audience with any questions? There in the front, we have one there.
Chris Neal from Bristol. 20% of global greenhouse gases come from livestock and associated practices. That's more than all forms of human transport put together. Livestock also produce 70% of global ammonia, which ultimately results in acid rain as one complication, not to mention land and water pollution. And 80% of this livestock, this global livestock, is cows, cattle. I enjoy beef, milk and dairy products quite a lot. But sadly, would the panel agree that the best way to reduce pollution, global warming and free up land and water for wildlife is to wean ourselves off cattle products for good?
Fred, if we stop eating beef, will that solve all population problems?
Stopping eating beef won't. If all the products of livestock, that would go quite a long way. But for vegetarians, you have to remember that the footprint of your dairy products is pretty much as big as your footprint for meat. So switching to a lot of cheese and milk doesn't help a huge amount. But I think we should be eating less meat. I think we should be consuming fewer livestock products. But also, we should be raising livestock in much more ecologically friendly ways.
Do you eat meat, Fred?
I do.
Do you eat meat?
I do not.
No, right. But any other vegetarians in the audience? Oh, quite a few. But only still a small minority. I guess any vegans in the audience? Yeah, you see quite a few of those too.
Now, they are having an effect.
Yeah. So
well done.
The Center for Biodiversity, we started a population and sustainability program, and the two major focuses of it are the human population growth, and the second is the growth of our livestock and the impact of our meat production. Right now, meat production is the number one most pervasive, largest impact of humanity on the planet. It's extraordinary.
Well, let me just stop you there because we've got quite a lot of questions.
The current global human population is now over 7 billion, with projections suggesting it may rise to somewhere between 8.3 and 11 billion by 2050, although some analysts and computer models indicate it might actually begin to fall back to well below its current level. Predicting population up or down into the future is extremely difficult. The likely limiting factors for humans are drops in the birth rate as a result of better birth control and education that come with rising living standards, but food shortages and scarcity of other resources such as water are also restraining factors. We have a finite planet, and as humans spread further, natural environments are at risk, and according to the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, the most important direct driver of change over the past 50 years or so has been land cover change, in particular the conversion of ecosystems to agricultural land. Today, there are around 1.4 billion head of cattle globally. That's about 29 cows per hectare of land. They are getting on for 20 billion chickens, one rooster, hen and chick for every one of us on this planet. And there are around 1 billion each of sheep and pigs. All these animals have to live somewhere, and satellite data shows that we use about 27% of the Earth's land surface to raise them. And then there are the crops we grow, which account for another 11%. And as the human population rises by more than 200,000 each day, so our agricultural footprint is likely to go up as well. A report by the University of Wisconsin-Madison showed that all of the places in the world where we could grow crops are already being cultivated, except for Latin America and Africa. That's the continent which is also showing the fastest human population growth, predicted to double to 2.4 billion within a few decades. So that's where pressure for any further increases will be felt. And these places are home to some of our most biologically diverse terrestrial ecosystems, such as rainforest, where we're losing an area of forest the equivalent of 3 football pitches every minute of every day. But it's not just rainforests that are being squeezed. All of the world's ecosystems are under pressure as the human population expands. Fresh water is in increasing demand. This means more extraction, more dams, more altered rivers and lakes, and less water for the natural environment. Even the 70-odd% of the world that's under seawater, the ocean, is feeling the pinch, with coastal development, declining fish stocks, pollution, and rising sea temperatures taking their toll. Whichever way you look at it, the world's biodiversity is being hit from all sides by a multitude of threats, and they result from a burgeoning human population that's competing with nature for space, resources and water.
Kelvin Booth there. Now, Kieran Suckling, we've heard some of the hard facts, and it struck me that some of those were particularly hard. Would you like to briefly outline your take on this topic?
Yes, thank you. Are there too many of us? Yes, undoubtedly. Our extraordinary growth to 7 billion people and projected growth to 10 billion by mid-century is more than the planet can sustain. It's more than our social systems can sustain. We're living on borrowed time and resources, or more correctly, we're living on stolen resources. The rich are stealing from the poor, and the powerful from the less powerful. If we were comfortable here in the developed world, it's because we're stealing land, water, and resources from the developing world. Now, the least wealthy, the least powerful among us are the planet's wildlife. As our population has grown, we've crowded them out, we've destroyed and poisoned their habitats. We've driven so many extinct so fast, we've created the planet's 6th largest extinction crisis. Now, some will say it's not a matter of how many people there are, it's a matter of how much we consume and how we do it. Speaking of population, they say, is a distraction from reform of consumption practices. But the truth is, we can and we must do both. The only way to ensure a thriving human society and healthy wildlife populations is to reduce our consumption, to change our consumption patterns, and also to reduce our population size. We cannot bring back the thousands of plants and animals we've already driven extinct, but we can ensure that those still alive today will survive. Indeed, we have an ethical responsibility to do so. The good news is this will also produce a fairer, more just, more sustainable human society, and one more connected to wildlife and the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Fred Pearce, over to you to put forward, if not an opposing view, a different one.
Well, I want to put forward an optimistic view, or at any rate a view that gives us some way out of the dilemmas that we really have. It would be very easy to look around the world and conclude that there are too many people for nature to thrive. But I'd quite like to think about the possibility that that's not true, because I think if it comes down to a battle between humans and nature, actually I have no doubt that nature would win. So nature has some things going for it. It's more pervasive than we are, even now. Let's think about humans, for instance. First of all, we are actually defusing the population bomb right now. Women today, around the world, on average, have half as many children as their mothers did. 2.5, in fact, under 2.5 children per woman now. Huge progress. We've already reached what they call peak child. The number of children in the world is not increasing anymore. And the total population will probably peak within a few decades. You know, we can argue about how and when, but it will. It's not human numbers anymore. Population matters, but consumption is the big issue for our impact on the planet, with the consumption bomb, if you like. But we do actually know how to do a lot of things much better. We know how to get our energy without filling the atmosphere with fossil fuels. We already produce enough food for 10 billion people. We have 7 billion, we produce enough for 10. But we waste it, we waste so much of it. So we have to do a lot of things a lot better. What about nature? I think we get nature wrong. Nature isn't this fragile thing, something we can either choose to kill or protect. Nature is really resilient. It's adaptive, it's dynamic, and it constantly fights back. Any gardener knows how, when you're fighting weeds, how nature comes back. And it's true in the rainforest as well. Chop down a rainforest and it'll grow back within a few decades. And I think the way that nature constantly recovers from all that we do to it is real evidence that it's still bursting with life, it's still dynamic, and I find that really good news. I think it'll see us off. If you like, hooray for the Japanese knotweed. That's a really dynamic plant. We may not like it, but boy, can it grow. Of course we should try to minimize the damage we do. I'm an environmentalist. Absolutely, I believe in that. We should do it for our own good, as much as anything else. And yes, we have lost lots of species and lots of wild places, but I do believe that nature itself is thriving, and whatever we do will continue to.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. I never thought I'd hear someone say hooray for the Japanese knotweed, but there we go. We've heard two views. On the one hand, Kieran is saying that we are robbing from nature. We're the rich, nature is the poor, and we are abusing our power by taking from it, and we need to adjust that, not least by reducing our population. Fred's saying that nature is resilient and would win any straight battle, and anyway, things are getting better. And if only we manage it better, we needn't be pessimistic. Now, we're going to discuss this. Kieran, does that convince you that the population problem can be largely helped, if not solved, simply by sorting out our waste and our distribution and our insatiable desire to grow in consumption?
No, I don't think it's enough. The speaker mentioned pollution, plastics, but also sprawl are building out. And I think that some of our environmental problems are more susceptible to solution by regulation and technical means by others. One of those is pollution of pesticides and control of waste. But the second issue that she mentioned was one of sprawl, of this growth. And the issue there is that we've already usurped 70% of the land mass of the planet. 70% of the planet is currently managed for human use. And that's with 7 billion people. And when we add another 3 billion people by mid-century, those people are going to need somewhere to live. So this is why I say, we cannot simply say it's enough to just work on consumption. If we do not control our population numbers, we're not going to be able to solve this problem.
Kieran, doesn't this get to the nub of what we're discussing tonight, which is that because there are so many of us, our actions are having an impact that are making it impossible for nature to thrive?
The rate of extinction worldwide is growing. Fred talks about, nature's resilient and the rainforests grow back. The issue is species are dying. They're going extinct. That rainforest that gets cut down that Fred says will grow back in 15 years, the species that went extinct when it was cut down will not come back in 15 years. The ecosystem function will not come back. And so we've got to keep an eye, on the wildlife, on the ecosystems, and not get lost in just, frankly, sort of vacuous talk about nature in general. With the bees, this is a very interesting issue because it does more and more look like that's being impacted by pesticides, which are coming from our agriculture. Can we produce enough food on organic farms in local systems for 10 billion people?
Can we? What do you think?
I don't think we can. I think that we're going to need an industrial scale agriculture to produce it.
So the logic from that is industrial scale agriculture has collateral damage with the natural world that we have to accept. Is that what you're saying?
We either have to accept it or we have to get our population numbers down enough that we no longer have to rely on that industrial scale agriculture.
Okay, let's leave it at that for the moment because I want to get as many more questions in as I can.
Thank you. My name's Tessa Fitzjohn and I come from Bristol. My question to the panel is about the rights of our environment and animals as opposed to human rights. So if we're taking a course of action where the population is going to increase, we are basically denying the environment and wildlife the right to exist because in the end it will disappear.
Kieran, you could pick that up.
This is a very, very critical issue because they're not given the rights that they need. They're not acknowledged. And in fact, when you see most discussions about can we have 10 billion people, is it sustainable? The whole discussion is built around are there enough resources for humans to take to feed themselves? Yes or no? Sustainability has to be that we share the planet with other species. It's not just about what we can steal from them.
Ultimately, I admit that I'm a humanist and I'm not too worried about animal rights. And I certainly don't think that we're capable of wiping out nature. I think nature will see us off. But I'm also convinced that we need nature. We need the services, if you like, that nature provides. And we need to work very hard to protect what of it we can.
Okay, Fred, thank you very much indeed. We're going to stop with the questions there.